Welcome back to the Writer's Block. As always, I'm Todd. This guy's Andy, and we're talking about writing, and everything that has to do with writing, and our experiences with writing, and influences on writing. And I could go on for hours, but I won't. Instead, we'll just get right into the fascinating information that we have. So, uh, last week, if you'll recall, we were talking about self-publishing. Uh, my co-host here, Andy, claimed that I was I was self-published and I was, on this higher tier or some other baloney. Um, Now, yeah, I am self-published technically. A lot of people are self-published, and I I used a website called Kindle Direct Publishing, which is through Amazon. So you can, have you heard of? I don't know if I've asked you
Yeah,
before.
you said yeah, you sent me the link and I set it up briefly, but I didn't have my routing number with me. So in case I publish something and I actually got, money for it, they could just direct deposit in my bank account. So I still have to finish setting it up, but yes, I have set it up.
Well, so one interesting thing about KDP, which is the acronym, so you get paid for obviously for book sales if you sell a physical copy, but if somebody's reading your book and they have the Amazon Kindle uh, subscription or whatever, like you'll get paid based off of the number of pages that they read of your book online. So even if you don't actually sell the book, you get paid if they read it. So which is
Oh, I
kind
didn't
of
know
cool.
that.
I mean, you don't get paid a lot. I mean, I think it's we were talking nickels and dimes, but
I was
yeah. But yeah. So when you put your book on Amazon, you can put it on all their markets, and they have markets not just in America, obviously, but across Europe, Canada. I think they have a number of markets in Asia as well. It goes out everywhere. You'll get like if you do make a sale, like I made one sale that was in some foreign country, and the currency you get paid in wasn't the currency, so it had to be it's called I don't know, exchange into the U.S. currency. It's all done automatically, but it's kind of neat to see like people from around the world like actually like uh, either like reading a couple pages of your book and then, or at least in my case, read a couple pages and then realized, oh, I don't want to read this book and then moved on. But the it's really easy to do. Like for the overall process for Kindle Direct Publishing is you just upload your manuscript, you put in the title, you put in keywords, like for if somebody wanted to search for one style of book, one genre or a type of whatever, you put those keywords in so that it pops up. You also, yeah, like I said, you upload your manuscript, you create a book cover, or you can put in your own book cover. It doesn't take too long. I mean, the hardest part, obviously, is writing the actual book or short story. Like, you can put whatever you want in there, up there, anthologies, and then you just wait and see if it sells. It's pretty. I would say it's pretty simple. Once you kind of get the hang of it, you can just kind of put as many up there as you want. But that's been my experience with self-publishing. Like I said, it's cool to have everything out there, and some people do buy some of my items, some people don't. Most people don't. But a different medium to publish your stories are your website, right?
yeah, I have my own website. I created it with Wix. I did some research back early 2020, right around late May, early June, right when the pandemic was in full force the first time and we were in shutdown. And I've always thought about publishing, like making my own website and getting my work out there. And after doing some research, I found Wix was the easiest. And then, because all you have to do is you go to Wix.com, and then it asks like a bunch of prompts, like what are you doing this for? Like, is it a blog? Is it a journal? Is it like teaching methods or whatever? And then you pick out it. They give you templates, so you pick a template that you want. You can add it. The best part of it is like you can pick a template that you like, but if you don't want everything within that, you can delete it. delete like sections of it. And then after that, it publishes for you, and then you download the app, and it tells you every time someone like visits your website, which I think is pretty cool. And then you download, but then you have to download a separate website or app that gives you like the trying to think of the word, like the
statistics.
Yeah, the statistics, and like how your month went, how, like, you know, compared to other months. And you can download, or you can buy, or you can hire someone to help like maintain your website, but it's, you have to buy it. And so you just do it yourself. It's really easy to maintain. You don't, like, the only thing I don't have is like a domain for my website. So it's a little bit harder to find, but other than that, I find it super easy. So I recommend it. I can put the website link in the description, and it's what you click on that, and if you're really interested, and it goes from there. I know I had a buddy who was starting his own blog, and he asked me how easy it was, and I said it was pretty easy, and I recommended Wix, and then he started using that. So
just for clarification, Wix is not a paid sponsor of our program today.
It is not.
They could be in the future if they want to be. But yeah, I will say domain names, because I have my own website. It's just my name. It's howbyron.com. But I think it costs around $110 a year to keep it. But which it's a little bit of money, especially considering that like independent authors and self-publishing in general, like you're almost always operating at a loss early on, at least. And so if you don't have the money to spend on it, then you shouldn't. Obviously, it's more of if you have the means to do it, it's nice to have like a central location where you can have links to your Amazon pages or your additional blog pages or various other websites. Like you can sell merchandise based off of your clothing or based off of your books on like websites like Teespring. You can have clothing, pillows. I mean, all sorts of stuff, stickers, just based off of maybe like a town name or a main character or some organization. You could have it all for sale there, and they could have this centrally located website. This website with all these centrally located links to all these different places, and then you can just plug that website everywhere you're at. On YouTube, social media, Spotify, wherever. And that's kind of what I use it for. I also do have a little blog attached to it. I try to update it every month, but it's hard sometimes, especially now because I haven't really been able to write a whole lot, just being in being in school and stuff like that. But it's I want to say having a domain's worth it if you have the extra money to put into it, and you can also.
So I'm going to jump in. I'm going to jump in on that because Wix too, you can have links to your Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn too, as well. So if you can't have the time or the money to spend on a domain, I guess that helps in the meantime until you up and running. And then you can subscribe to the website as well, or leave a comment. That's what I like to use it for, really, is to like critique my writing. So, because I get a lot of like, oh, this is great. I'm like, I know it's not, great because it's all of my friends. So it's kind of out there to be like, okay, you got to tell me what's wrong with it so I can fix it in future writings.
Yeah,
and in my biggest project too.
That's always the difficult thing is like trying to get constructive criticism from like people around you. Because like for me, it's always like if I ask my mom, like, hey, how's this story? How's this look? She'll say, oh, it's amazing. It's the best thing I've ever read. You should it should be a top seller on wherever. And I'm like, you're not telling the truth. You didn't even read it, did you? And so like it's hard to find like a body of people to constructively criticize your work, especially if they aren't authors. I feel like, or readers, because like if you don't normally read books, if you don't normally read in general, then it might not be the best. But yeah, it can be a challenge. But yeah, it sounds like that website does make it easier to have like, people outside of that circle kind of read in and then leave their perspective on it.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. Thankfully, it's easy. So
Wix.com.
Wix.com. That's simple.
Unpaid promotion.
Yeah, very unpaid.
Yeah. For now, anyways. But so I guess that kind of sort of indirectly leads into our next topic, which is of course it has to do with writing. We wouldn't have guessed that a bit. Writing, like, so okay, so when you're writing, some people are in a certain mindset, or they're in a certain medium, or a certain setting. Some people, they have to be at their desk, some people they write out in their sunroom or outside while the wind's blowing through their hair. Some people have music playing, some people have complete silence. What's your preferred setting for writing?
So for right now, it's very unorthodox. I sit on my couch, have music, mostly either like noir, jazz, or symphony music from movies, like composers that I found that I like, playing on my smart TV, and do it that way. So I have my laptop on my lap, my legs stretched out on like the coffee table, and that's how I do it. I don't sit at a desk. I don't. And then sometimes if I do sit at a desk, I have my notes in front of me, and then I have some alcohol. But usually it's on the couch. It's very, very unprofessional. How do you do it?
Well, to be honest, it's a little different. Actually, I'm usually sitting right here at this desk on this computer, and actually, my desk, like, you can't see it, but it's covered in folders with different projects in it. And so I'll sit here, I'll type out, all my work, and usually I have music playing. Usually it's instrumentals, no vocals, just to try to, like, stay as to try not to be distracted, And so it's just music. Usually, like, lately it's been it's a genre, it's a niche genre called synthwave. It's basically sounds like music from the 80s. It's all synthy, and I have that playing in the background. I've got a playlist that's probably like 800 hours long, but I throw it on. Still haven't made it to the end of it yet, obviously. And yeah, I just pretty much do it that way. Although, yeah, I was right on the desk. I've never, I don't know why I've never really been able to write in any other medium. This is just kind of where I've always done it.
So where I'm sitting now is like a dining room table in the Florida room. And then the one time I did do that, I actually cranked out like 6 pages with music. I don't even think it was on my TV. It was in my headphones, and I had something to drink, and I was just in the zone. And it felt a little bit better because I was actually sitting up and not, slouching and lounging on the couch. So I probably should transition over there. But some of my best scenes have been sitting on the couch. So it's comfier, but it's harder to read your notes because you're up and down, like trying to grab stuff from the table. And then, so it's give or take. Depends on what kind of mood you're in, to be honest with you.
Fair enough. Yeah, I have the memory of, I can't really remember. I've been writing for a while, and I can't remember all the time I've written, but in recent memory, I think for the last several years, it's always been right at the desk with some kind of music. I guess you said something that also got me thinking. Your notes that you take for your stories. So an outline basically? How detailed is your outline when you're writing?
So I don't have it in front of me, but I took my main characters from my novel for my big project, and then like sketched out a brief description that I kind of go back and use, just like little details here and there. And then I have the town, and then a description in that, and then like other townspeople with like 1 or 2 sentence descriptions that I can flesh out within, my story where I feel fits where I'm trying to, focus on. And then I have a very poorly constructed doodle of a map of the town that I sometimes use to like keep, because I've written short stories using the same characters in the same town that I published. So I'm trying to keep that like almost the same in my novel. So if I say something is northwest in my short stories, I have to make sure I actually put that on the map and don't say like northeast in my actual story, like my novel. So and then I add more if I feel like I'm not going to write it down like today or something. Like while I'm writing, I write down notes next to the names if I think of a detail for later on. So it's not too detailed, and then I go off the script too. If I try write something out and it doesn't work, then I just exit out, scratch it, and then try something different. How about you? Do you have a very detailed outline? Because I know you were actually the one who actually told me about how you like to outline everything. Because before I was just going through the motions. I never sketched anything out beforehand.
Yeah, I think I've always outlined it, stories. I used to use these computer programs called like I think one of them was Scrivener, but I've always preferred to write out my outlines by hand on paper. And so what I start with is I start with a general idea of what I want the story to be, and I I based off of based off of how that idea is, I'll come up with maybe a main character or uh the protagonist who's pushing that character forward, and I just kind of like I work on building that person, and uh, trying to think. I haven't actually made an outline in a while, but thereon I do a pretty detailed outline of major events throughout the story, and so like that's like a general outline for the whole story. So beginning to end, uh, and then all those points I break down even further into outlines, which those major points are usually going to be chapters in my story, and so from there I'll have where things begin, like what's the goal of that chapter, because I try to look at every chapter as a mini story in a way, to have some kind of arc, some kind of ending, and then also I try to leave that ending with a sense of what's anticipation of what's coming next. I guess it's something I've been working on for a couple years now, and still trying to fine tune the process. But I try to make as detailed as a story for an outline as I can, so that I know where I'm going with the story. I don't because like I've written stories in the past where I kind of I started with an outline, and then I kind of just went in a different direction and ended up making I would call it a mistake, because at that point I would be so far away from my intended destination that like it's not even like a full story. It's not like a fluid story. I guess it's kind of a mess. And so sticking with an outline helps me to stay on track, get where I want to be. And also, I mean, sometimes when I'm following an outline, if I think I can add more to the story with additional work, like that, as long as it fits in that outline, like then I'll do it, and I'll get more development and such. But I try to stick to a pretty detailed, explicit outline.
See, my thinking is that like, so if I can stay like a little bit loose with it, and as long as it like ropes back in to what I'm like the main point or how the story is supposed to end, I'm okay with it. But like if it goes off the rails and I'm like, this isn't gonna work, then I have to delete it all. But if I use it to like, okay, this is a little bit off of what I intended, but it works a little bit better, I just keep it. So I guess I don't strictly, I guess it's more note taking than actual outlines.
Yeah.
So it's kind of something to keep my my thoughts, to remind me of what I was thinking at the time, because when you're in the writing zone, I don't know about you, you can crank out so much and then have like 10 great ideas, and then 2 days later you're like, I don't remember any of these, I can't write right now. That's how I feel right now. I had a great like 2 weeks of writing, or a week and a half, and I haven't touched it since because I'm not mentally there. But thankfully in my notes I wrote down stuff that I wanted to incorporate, so I didn't forget them.
Sometimes I'm like laying down to go to bed, I'll start thinking of ideas, and I know for a fact if I don't, if I come up with an idea that I really like, if I don't write it down in that moment, even if it's 4 in the morning or whatever, if I don't get up and write it down in that moment, it's gone. And
Yeah, that's how I feel too.
I definitely have like, scribbled notes like that. But I guess going back to what you're saying about being in the zone to write, where you haven't been in the zone for a couple of weeks, it kind of goes back to what we started off with, which was, when you're writing, what kind of mindset are you in? And I guess the question would be, can you only, like for you, can you only write when you're in that zone, or do you ever force yourself to write? Did you ever try to meet like a deadline or some kind of quota?
Sometimes like I cannot be fully in the zone and then write and then I get into it. But sometimes I'll try to start like, and it like there's a page and a half. I can do a page and a half, no problem, but I read it and I'm like, this is utter crap. So I delete it, get rid of it, and then just stop. Because I'm like, this is not how I want it to like sound or anything. I remember once I started one of the stories actually on my website 3 different times. I had 3 different thoughts and I wasn't in the zone, but the third time I started going at it, I cranked out 3 pages, no problem, because I was like, sounds right, it works, let's keep going because your juices are finally flowing. How about you? Do you have to stop or like
I have
anything like that?
Zone. Like, well, I have just compared my work from because I have forced myself to write in the past, because I've made deadlines for myself for like pre-orders on Amazon, for example, where it's coming out on this day, it has to be done, and I haven't done it yet, so I have to do it because I don't want to delay anything if I don't have to. So I'll force myself to write the story, and I'll look back at it, sometime later, and I'll know for a fact that it doesn't have the same, I guess, the same passion or the same I don't know what the right word is, but the same amount of effort wasn't put into that as was put into some other stories when I was really in that mindset, in the motion of, I'm
dedicated.
creating,
you weren't as dedicated.
Yeah, I think it goes back to like, the overall question, why do you write? Do you write money? Do you write for yourself? And all those things. In that moment, I'm just writing because I have to, not because I want to. Because I'm not in the zone where I want to write. I'm in the zone where I need to do this. It's almost like a job in a way. And because of that difference in mindset, the overall story, in my opinion, suffers. So I try to only write if I'm ever really, not really, but if I'm in any kind of zone where I really want to make progress on writing, then I'll do it. But I won't ever force myself to write. I'll never sit down and say, well, I got to do this, so let's just quit out some, what will end up probably being half-assed work because I feel like I need to.
So I guess that brings up the question: have you ever written like if you're angry or I guess sad or anything like that? Like have you ever like that actually worked and you could publish it? Not just like, I'm mad, I'm just gonna type whatever's on my mind and delete it.
So actually, I've got 2 examples. There's one story, a short story I wrote years ago when I was still in high school, which I'll never publish because all that stuff is just not publishable. But I was really angry about something my stepsister did, and so I wrote a short story. Basically, the whole time I was just angry writing, and I like looking back at it. It's embarrassing, like you realize that when you're not in that mindset anymore, you're just seeing basically, like, I would just call it garbage. I mean, I don't want to go too specific into the story. It was just not, it was motivated not in a sense of to try to create something good. It was just, an expression of anger, and so sometimes that could work, in a story. Of course, I was like, I think 15, so it wasn't anything worthwhile. But another thing I wrote a few years ago, 2018, I think, it was a piece. Like at the time, I was kind of going through some like depressive stuff, and so it was a story that kind of it was inspired by a lot of the things I was trying to do at the time that were failing. Oddly enough, back then I was trying to work on a podcast and other short film ideas, and everything was just failing. And so I kind of tied that into the story. And I thought it was a really good story um, overall. Kind of a sad story in a way, but given the depressive uh, beginnings of it, I guess. But that was a story which I haven't released ever, but I'd be confident in putting it out. You know, it's definitely a subject. Like anything that deals with depression is going to be kind of a touchy subject in a way, or it's going to be like difficult in some ways. I feel like, and I have some. I thought about putting it out, and I just never really felt like it. But what about you? Do you have any stories?
Like if I'm like, I guess, sad or emotional in that way, I won't write like full on stories revolving around why I'm feeling like that, but I'll maybe incorporate bits and pieces or
Yeah,
like subtle details to like help me,
yeah,
flesh it out or help me make it feel better. But nothing. I've never come home angry. Just like I have to write, just write a diatribe about
like
whatever I'm angry about.
like hate stories.
Delete it all. Yeah,
Basically
that's the only really time I've and actually some of the like one or two stories that I've published. I guess they don't revolve around why I was like upset or whatever, but they have bits and pieces of it, and I think it works.
Yeah, it's definitely like most of my stories. I think almost like I would say with everything I've written, there's a little part of me in almost all the characters and the story that's going on. It's hard. I know they say like you shouldn't. They say you shouldn't base characters in your novels based off of you, and I do agree with that. You don't want every character to be you, but one characteristic or trait of you in all these characters isn't. I don't think it's a bad thing, as long as each
I
character
have
is their own person. You know, like you'll never
I
see a
have
character in my book and think that it's me, for example.
I have a couple of characteristics in the novel that I'm writing that I used and had got rid of because I'm like, geez, they're gonna be like, oh, this is him. They're just describing himself, and I'm like, this is not gonna work. I have to get rid of this at all times. So it's not. Thankfully, I like thought about it because I know I've heard of people like describing like just basing off of themselves, and it's just not. It doesn't end well for anybody.
Yeah,
Or using like I don't recommend using like an ex-partner or a mother or a brother or anything
yeah,
like that. Like maybe one or two subtle, like maybe the color of their hair or their eyes or something, or one little mannerism, but not full-fledged like using the like a name that sounds strikingly similar to the actual person.
yeah.
I know people who have done that, like just script like jumble around the words a little bit and letters, and you're like, this
Yeah, like a character, oh, this is Saul, but they're actually based off of Paul. Ooh, creative. Yeah, I do have a number of characters in some of my stories that are based off of real people in my life, but they're, I'm a little more creative with the name changes. And I also, I change them enough where, like, I start off with, like, if it's somebody I want that's based off of a person in real life, I'll start with them, and then I'll just start adding new things or taking away things to make them their own person. Like I did this with my most recent couple books where um, where I basically just did that with a handful of characters. Like I took one person. Like to me, I'll still see these characters as that person I base them off of. But if you're reading it, even if the person that it's based off of is reading it, they won't be able to tell.
They will know, yeah.
You know, most likely. I mean, there's a couple where maybe they catch on, but
Yeah.
I won't. I don't think that. But those people would never read those books anyways. One of them died anyways, so it's
In the book or in real life?
Oh, in real life, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah, they're definitely not going to know.
I mean, anything's possible. I guess we live in a world full of endless opportunities, but I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime that they'll be able to somehow read it. So, but anyways, this is a podcast about writing, not about bringing back the dead to read my crappy novels. So I'm gonna crap on my novels.
You're not a very good salesman.
I'm terrible. Don't buy my work. You don't want it. You're better off buying toilet paper. You'll get more usage out of it.
Well, I guess in that sense, if you started a new project, would you ever think about? Because I started my project and I have the prologue pretty much set in stone, and thought about publishing it on the website just to give a little bit, a little glimpse of what I'm working on. Would you ever do the same thing? And I guess another question is, do you think I should publish it on my website?
Prologue. So
it's not very long.
From my understanding, prologues generally set the stage for a story, right? Or for a book, or maybe it'll go over certain events that are integral to the story.
Yeah, but I guess it's not even getting into what a prologue is. I guess just in general, would you put a piece of writing that you have for your next book and have it as a sneak peek?
Maybe. I don't know. So I've done sneak peeks before, and I've just used excerpts from inside the book that I thought were good little sections, and I'll throw that on my website or something. www.toddbarn.com. Check it out. But I generally, when it comes to prologues, I've never really used them, to be honest. I would consider using them on maybe depending on the genre. Like I've mentioned before that I want to write fantasy novels. I feel like a prologue could work there. I don't know. I think we might have different usages for prologues. I'm thinking.
I'm just saying, just to get I could even use the first chapter or something. I guess it's my main point or question is, would you just take a sneak peek and just throw it on your website? Doesn't have to be the prologue.
Oh yeah,
doesn't have to be an epilogue.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah, because especially with my stuff,
okay.
In particular, my stuff's everything on Amazon has got a price tag on it, but my website, is free to see the excerpt. So yeah, I would definitely anything that I thought was representative of the novel's quality or of the novel's story and where I wanted to go with it, I'd throw it up, and see what people say.
People say, okay. Yeah. Because I had one person read it and they liked it, but it's good to see more than the sample size needs to be a little bit larger than one person.
Yeah. That's the difficulty of our position as indie authors on the bottom of the barrel. But which there are probably millions of us. But I think that's a big. I guess it kind of goes on a separate subject, but networking. Using social media and local writers groups to kind of bind together, get more not just more followers or potential readers, but more eyes on our work. If we had a big enough network, for example, we could all review each other's work, and that higher number of eyes on your work can give you better constructive criticism as opposed to just wanting to.
I remember in college, actually, we had, I can't remember if it was my actual English professor or he brought in a former student of his. He graduated from the same college I did, and he was a writer. And he actually went to seminars. He never went to graduate school. He actually went to a seminar that some not super famous author, but a well-known author put together within a school or something, and you paid and you had you had to make sure you had manuscripts, and then you were put in a group of 6, and everybody read like one person's manuscript or parts of it, and then they like shot back feedback to each other, and they did that for maybe a week. So it's like something like that helps. It not just pushing this out to your friends and family, because they're all gonna 90 times out of 10 they're gonna be, oh, this is great, nothing's wrong with it. Maybe change one word usage if like they actually read, but other than that, they're just like, oh, this is fantastic.
That's
Which is not a bad thing, because it makes you feel good for like 5 seconds when you're like,
yeah,
hey, what's really wrong with it?
I will say it is cool when people are like, oh, I can't believe you're published. I can't believe you're an author. Oh, this is so cool. And it's like, deep down inside, I know that it's generally meaningless, but it's like, oh, this, yeah, I mean, it's to hear somebody else saying it, it is nice at first, you know? So yeah, generally, yeah, I mean, it's better to have a larger group of people covering your manuscripts and your work to get the best amount of constructive criticism, especially people who aren't biased, such as certain friends and family. You know, like my grandfather, he was one of the first people to leave a review for my first novel, and I shouldn't be bringing this up, but it's not the greatest review. You know, it's you know, it was somewhere in the middle of like, I don't want to be too harsh because he's my grandson, but what am I reading? You know, and to put this, you know, it wasn't like rude or anything like that. It was a funny comment. But anyways, and that was actually an Amazon review that he did. So yeah, tanked my reviews on Amazon. Yeah, but you know, definitely good to have people. My grandfather, I should throw out there too. He reads a heck of a lot of books. Like he reads James Patterson. He reads a whole, like he's read probably more books than I'll ever read. So it makes the review even worse. But yeah.
So how many people would you like, what's, I guess, the best number? Because I remember I said like 6 or 7 just now with that seminar group of people. Do you think there should be more? That 6 or 7 is like the best amount? Because you can't have, I feel like 6 is the least amount.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the more the better, you know, more the merrier, as to say. The more eyes, you know, the more perspectives you can get, the better. I mean, obviously you won't be able to get everyone in the world to read your manuscript, but I would go for everyone, you know. I mean, I think there are a number of communities either on like Facebook or Twitter where you could, you know, throw out your manuscript and people will just read it, you know, for free. You know, I haven't reached out to many of these people before, but there are a lot of options, you know. It goes back to that whole networking idea of, you know, people that are all the same industry trying to help each other out. But yeah, I don't think there's a limit on how many people you should have read your manuscript.
I guess for me, I feel like too many would kind of cloud your overall, like what you're trying to convey in your story. Because if you hear, say 20 different feedback or different forms of feedback, then you're like, okay, what actually am I going to take? What actually is not going to, you know, what do I take out or what do I leave in, sort of thing. So I feel like maybe 12 for me would be like,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like
I mean,
the max amount, but it would be people that you never even talked to or like,
yeah,
you know, before.
unbiased sources that don't want to just appeal to your senses. Yeah. I mean, I think with a larger number of people, you could like for example, you could have one of those 12 people have a criticism that maybe isn't all that valid, you know what I mean, or something that doesn't necessarily need to be you know, looked at. And then when you have a larger group of reviewers, you could look for the most common complaints or most common criticisms and look at those, you know, specifically, as opposed to each like individual detail. Where it's like I've had people say that when you're writing, you shouldn't have like, you know, for example, I can't believe she said that. Andy said, you know, they'll say, well, you don't have to put said Andy at all. You could just write exclaimed Andy or like that those words that follow the dialogue. And I've heard multiple different ways of the best way to do it. And to be honest, I mean, I think it comes down to preference. And so that preference, it's really subjective, So if one of those 12 reviewers is harping on something like that, it's kind of, I would almost say, a wasted energy having to read that particular style of critique. But I don't know. I guess that's up to each individual person.
Again, it comes down to preference, like you
Yeah.
just said. So I definitely agree, the more the merrier, but I guess to an extent, because then your judgment gets clouded. And then you start questioning, like, am I actually doing this properly, or do I need to scratch it and start over?
Yeah. I think every writer has a fair amount of self-doubt in what they're doing. It's possible not to. But yeah, I would say, I don't know, I think maybe something that we could work on in this platform we have here is perhaps in, like, doing more like manuscript reviewing, not just for the two of us, but for other indie authors. Because I know at some point we kind of want to have other indie authors on, have like just guests, for example, in the future. And we're probably running out of time, but yeah. Anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, definitely having guests probably would help us in a sense as independent writers as well, like boost like how we should approach fleshing out scenes or getting other ideas that way. But definitely have maybe manuscripts of our own for other people to review. Would definitely help.
One big benefit to having like different authors on, you get the different perspective, different preference. Somebody who might say, "Oh, well, I don't want anyone that is in my family to review things, or I don't want anyone outside my preferred genre to review, or whatever. There's a whole number of different subjective takes that could be had by any number of different indie authors, and but that's definitely sometime down the road. But I guess you have any other topics you want to speak on? No.
No, I think we hit a lot today, a lot more than I expected.
I mean, we did cover a bit of stuff. That is for sure. I guess so. Yeah, we'll start plugging some social media. Okay, well, actually, a lot of this is going to be on the YouTube page. If you look on the homepage or on the top part, it should have both of our Twitters as well as our websites. There is a link to, well, I might have to take it down. There's a link to Patreon, but we don't have a Patreon yet. We may have one in the future, which is why it says soon in captions. I guess what I'll say is, if you would be interested in donating to a Patreon, let us know in the comments down below, and maybe we'll open one up sooner rather than later, I guess. And if you're listening, well, thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. We got a long way to go before we hit the same numbers as Joe Rogan and the other podcast, the Sox podcast. So
yeah, we might have to like push a podcast a day for the next 10 years if we could even promote, and then Joe Rogan have to stop publishing podcasts.
Maybe maybe eventually we'll get there. Maybe we can get Joe Rogan on sometime. He's probably written a book before. I think he'll answer an email.
Probably that, or you just have to direct message him on Twitter.
I'm sure he'll respond to me. I have over 150 followers, so for sure he'll respond to social media giant Todd Byron, of course.
There you go.
But yeah, thanks for watching. It's been real fun, as a matter of fact. It's been cool. It's been dope AF, as the kids say. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end it before I embarrass Andy. Thanks for watching. Catch us next time on YouTube or Spotify.
Catch you next week.
Wherever else we are at, because we're gonna be all over the place. We're gonna be on that billboard on the interstate that you pass by. We're gonna be on the those little screens at the gas stations where they say all that useless crap. We're gonna be there. We're gonna be everywhere, and you won't want to miss this.